Excuse me, Your Worship, you're live.
Okay, thank you. All right, Council, it's 5 o'clock. We'll get down to work. And I will call the council meeting for Monday, December 14 to order. And today we acknowledge that Collingwood is located on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabek, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. And I will now look for a motion to adopt the agenda, and it is moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved that the content of the council agenda for December 14, 2020 be adopted as presented. Any questions or comments, council, before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously, and I have to get my cards. I think we might have lost Councillor Comey. Sarah, do we lose Councillor Comey?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
She sent a note saying she's having difficulty with her Wi-Fi and is looking to try a new spot in her house.
Okay. And while we're on the topic, Councillor Madigan was in touch with me. He is delayed in traffic and will be arriving once we're in progress. So I will go on then to declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations, Council? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. With respect to council meeting agenda number 14.1C, closed session agenda 4.3, I am a director on the board of directors of a party with an interest in one of the properties for which council is receiving an update. So I'll ask for the reports to be severed under 4.3 so that I'm able to participate in other properties to be updated for which I have no conflict.
Okay.
Thank you.
Duly noted, and we will remind me when we get in camera, please. Any other declarations, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we progress, please let me know. Adoption of the minutes. Item 4.1 is moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Doherty. That the minutes of the council meeting held November 23, 2020 be approved as presented. Council, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And is there any business arising from the previous minutes, Council? Seeing none, then we'll get into community announcements, and I'll start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have nothing this evening.
Councillor McLeod.
We have entered, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have entered the red zone, as I'm sure all of us know, as of midnight last night, or I guess the first minute of today. And so that means many changes, and I'm certain more to come. And so the curling club, just to advise, has paused its season. While we've been doing everything we can to remain within the orange rules. Red rules mean 10 people inside a building, and that is the end of the season for now. We are hoping that everyone behaves themselves so that we can move out of red and back into orange in 28 days, which will be January 11th, which I am counting down to. Thank you.
Yes, I think we're all hoping for that eventuality and looking to our residents to abide by the social restrictions, washing hands, sanitizing hands, wearing masks when out in public, and not be able to maintain 2 meters of physical distancing, and really to only go out when absolutely necessary. And I know we'll have an update from CAO Skinner later on that item. I will go back to Councillor Comey and Councillor Madigan when they arrive, if they get here while we're on our community announcements, and I'll go to you, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. It has been announced that Home Horizons will be doing their coldest night of the year, which is their biggest promotion of the year. on February 20th, 2021, and it will be a virtual event. And you can get more information about this at cnoi.org/Home Horizons. And I guess just generally, I'll mention, although I'm sure I don't need to, but so many of our local charities are really struggling because major events and fundraisers have been canceled this year. So I hope that we will all keep them in mind. So that's My Friend's House and Hospice and Out of the Cold and so many more. This is where community coming together really counts. And thank you. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Councillor Comey, you've rejoined us, so I will go back and see if you had any community announcements today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Did anyone mention a Hockey for Hope that we held over the weekend?
No.
Okay. And when I moved, I forgot my glasses. So until a small person in my house can be found, I will do my best to hang in there. Well, this Saturday, Collingwood Girls Hockey held their 4th annual Hockey for Hope. And the good news is they raised over $2,600 for My Friend's House and 2 carloads full of much needed supplies for them. So we're absolutely delighted that they were able to do that. As Councillor Doherty, I just heard her saying how much in need so many are. But I think what's really neat is that the Collingwood Girls Hockey asked me to extend their thanks to, am I still with you all? Because I'm getting this little note.
Yep,
My
you're still
Wi-Fi.
here.
Okay, I'm sorry, everybody. But they wanted to thank our Parks and Rec team for all the support they've provided to the team for safe play and how much it means to the girls. So I thought they got a thanks in to Parks and Rec. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Comey. And it was good timing that they had it on the weekend because in this red coating, they would not be able to play a game and only, I think, have 10 skaters on the ice at once. I will go next to Councillor Jeffrey, and then we'll go back to Councillor Madigan. I see he's just getting settled in. So go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madigan, do you have any community announcements? I know you've just joined us.
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Berman.
Nothing for me today, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 things briefly. It's been mentioned, of course, and everyone knows we're back in the red zone. So, and I know our community's been so good about shopping locally, but I really wanted to give a shout out to our restaurants, which are severely restricted now because of the new controls in place. And for those who can manage it, please continue to order out from your favorite restaurants so that they are still here in the new year for us to enjoy. The second thing I wanted to mention was there is a worldwide movement for a easy and safe community event on Christmas Eve that's starting out of North Yorkshire, England. And the idea is on Christmas Eve for 2 minutes, one goes outside at 6 p.m. and rings bells. And as the promoters of this event from this little community, they've set up a Facebook page about it, have said, it will create a wave of bells across the world. After a tough year, it would be an amazing memory for kids in the communities. End 2020 with a bit of magic, hope, and togetherness. So I'll be promoting this everywhere I can, and I have bells. So anyway, those are my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. And speaking of bells, Theatre Collingwood is doing a filmed presentation of A Christmas Carol reading this coming Friday at Simcoe Street Theatre. And as you know, Scrooge hears many bells. Those came at midnight, though, I think, in that production. But it would be a great way to support our local theatre and a great night of entertainment. So I would encourage people to go online and sign up for that. I think you can sign up for the link. And that's the end of community announcements for tonight. And that brings us to the consent agenda. And it is moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by council, be received. And I will call the vote and then ask for items to be pulled. So dealing first with receiving the consent agenda, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. And are there any items to be pulled, Council? Councillor McLeod, go ahead.
6.2, please. Sorry, 6.1.
6.1, okay, I've got you down for 6.1. Did you want 6.2 as well, seeing as you're the vice chair?
No, I'm okay.
Oh,
Someone
okay.
else has a question.
All right. I have item 6.1. Any other items, Council? Seeing none, then go ahead, Councillor McLeod. Thank
you, Mr. Mayor. I want to direct our attention to this particular letter and to express to our CAO through you, Mr. Mayor, hopefully this council's support for anything that needs to happen between now and January, when we're expecting our report, staff report, I think, on this topic. And just to be sure that we are getting that report and to perhaps hear an update on what has taken place. I've heard in the community from several people who are suggesting that, well, it's been a minute since this report came out, and what have we done? And I suspect that there is staff work that is taking place and that they're beavering away in the background, but I wonder if there's any way we can know a few details about what actually has taken place, perhaps to mollify some of our citizenry about what has taken place.
Yeah, I will put that question through to CAO Skinner. Sonia?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor McLeod. Thank you for asking this question. I think this is one that hasn't come back in front of Council since we did a couple of, well, actually we did an update in November, and it probably is time to let Council know what's happening. There's a few questions that I've discerned from what you've said and also in reading the letter. So some of the questions that I've heard is a priority clear? And I did want to assure the public and also to assure Council that this is one of the highest priorities that we have to move forward. And I think everybody, including myself, will feel better once we have a clear path on what we'd like to do. And so the priority is quite clear. It's equivalent with the top priorities that we have, things like providing clean drinking water and making sure the community is operating well. And is the timing clear is another question that I've heard. And I had in my original update maybe been a little ambitious in thinking we might get that report back to Council in December. It definitely will be at least January. And pending a couple of things that I'm still working on, it could be as late as early February, only because I would like to bring it forward at a Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting where there was a chance for public input and we had all of the members. But I wouldn't see it coming forward any later than that, possibly earlier. Another question that I was asked by Councillor McLeod and Councillor Berman was, do we have all the resources that we need to do a great job on the follow-up for the judicial inquiry? And it has been a challenge through the past month. Many folks are aware that we've had a couple of senior people go off to new things, and we're replacing those people, as well as the budget season. However, I do believe that with the budget that is on tap, has been endorsed by Strategic Initiatives Committee and is on tap for a final approval next Monday night, that we will have the resources that are needed to do a good job on the judicial inquiry follow-up, certainly to do a really good job on the report that you'll receive toward the end of January. And then the next steps in the plan, if there are resource considerations, we'll put those in front of SIC and Council at that time. Another thing that I've heard from several councillors and also from the public is will there be opportunities for public input? And I certainly would like to have public input and would recommend that the Council seek public input both on our plan to move forward and then potentially as we go through the more detailed steps. So I am building into that report opportunities for not only the public to provide input, but also in some cases to provide sort of bite-sized communications of what was actually in the report. Many of us, and I think many folks within Collingwood, have read the 30 or so pages in the summary provided by Justice Morocco, but not as many of us have waded through the hundreds of pages that follow. And there are a few pieces for of municipal interest to us, to other municipalities, and also to the province that are highlights within those pages. And so I've started some of the reaching out to officials on the staff side in the province. Have recently made contact with the OPP lead on the investigation. I don't have anything to report on their status at the moment, but I was going to talk to them about them providing some updates to us, potentially to council and the public, on what their next steps might be. And we've just started to look at a number of the policies, but I would say that there's a good amount of reading and thinking yet to be done. But as I mentioned at the beginning, and to bring it back to the beginning, it is a very high priority and staff are aware of that high priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And I can update council. I had reached out to our local MPP, Jim Wilson, and I've met with him about the judicial inquiry report, and was on the phone today with the Attorney General, Doug Downey, and we'll be meeting with him in the first week of the new year. So there is lots of work to be done on many fronts, and this is absolutely a high priority for this council. Follow up, Councillor McLeod.
Yes, thank you. Just a follow up through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. So at this time, do you need us to release funds or authorize the hiring of a legal firm or a consultant in any way? Is there any way that this council can be of assistance for this work to happen?
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor McLeod, I think that I do have all of the resources at my fingertips that I need at the moment. I do appreciate the role of council to be a conduit to folks in the community and to keep up each member to keep updating us on what they're hearing in the community. And I think that is probably the most important thing that I need right now, is just to understand what the community is thinking, and also to have council members and council as a whole articulate that there is action happening and a report is forthcoming. Thank you. And to please be patient for a few more weeks. It is a really important piece of work that is coming forward.
Thank you.
All right, council. We will move on then to reports and minutes of other committees and boards. And it is moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Doherty that the minutes of the following boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein be approved. 7.1 is the Collingwood Public Library Board minutes of November 26, 2020. And I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And the next item on the agenda then is Standing Committee Report 8.1. It's the Standing Committee Report from the Corporate and Community Services meeting of November 30, 2020. And it is moved by Chair Councillor McLeod and seconded by Vice Chair Councillor Comey. Be it resolved that Council received the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee Report from its meeting held November 30, 2020, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. C 2020-14, non-application of Line Fences Act 1990 bylaw. The recommendation is to enact a bylaw for the town of Collingwood to opt out of the application of the Line Fences Act, Statutes of Ontario 1990. T 2020-15, interim property tax levy. The recommendation is to enact a bylaw to establish the rates and due dates for the 2021 interim tax levy. Report T 2020-16, temporary borrowing bylaw. The recommendation is to enact a bylaw establishing the 2021 temporary borrowing facility for the town of Collingwood in the amount of $6 million. And the last item is Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit letter restrictions on access to recreational facilities in Simcoe Muskoka. And the recommendation is that the town-owned recreational facilities permit bookings and use of its facilities only by Ontario residents whose primary address is within the same or lower level than the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. So council, it's like the consent agenda. I will call the items unless somebody has an item to pull at this time in order to change the recommendation. Are there any items that need to be pulled to change the recommendations? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote and receive the report in its entirety. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Are there any items that people would like to pull just to speak to? And I've got you, Councillor Jeffrey, and then Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Just regarding C 2020-14 on the Line Fences Act, I read the report quickly, and I guess the question that came to my mind in the case of irreconcilable differences on fencing, I think our lack of cases in the past is because people have been able to rely on the fact that there was this backstop, whether it got used very often or not within our bylaws. And I'm wondering if we could just tell the residents now what their options are in the case of something they can't work out between themselves.
Thank you for that. I'll look to Clerk Almus. Go ahead, Sarah.
Certainly, through your worship, it becomes a civil matter between the two property owners. Regardless, the property owners, whoever is the one that's desirous of having the fence, as we proposed in the bylaw, would be 100% responsible. And if they did not desire to pursue a civil litigation, then they could put it 1 inch from the property line if they so desired.
Does that assist, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. I thought it was important for the public to understand what their options are following this. So thank you.
Yeah, good point. Hey, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I had precisely the same question, so thank you very much.
Okay. All right then. I think that takes us already to bylaws. It's going too fast. All right, so section 8.2 bylaws, 8.2.1, and the motion is, this is the bylaw dealing with the amendment to the Line Fences Act, and it's moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-79, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2013-46, a bylaw to provide uniform standards for the construction of fences within the town of Collingwood, be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. I am seeing no questions or comments, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Bylaw 8.2.2, and it is moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-80, being a bylaw to provide for the 2021 interim tax levy, be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. And just for clarity, that's bylaw number 2020-8080. Seeing no questions or comments, I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And the final bylaw, 8.2.3, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor McLeod. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. It's moved by Councillor Hamlin and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-81, being a bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing to meet the current expenditures of the town of Collingwood until taxes are collected and other revenues are received, be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 8.3, the Standing Committee Report from the Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting of December 2nd, 2020. We're just receiving a report tonight since that was the preliminary budget discussion. And so it's 8.3.1. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved that Council received the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee Report from its meeting held December 2nd, 2020, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried. And then that brings us to motions. And there is a motion by Councillor Hamlin. And I will put it on the table and then look for a seconder. And if this was notice was provided at the November 23. Sorry, is anyone having problems hearing me? Okay. Some are nodding yes and some are nodding no. So that's confusing to me.
You're a little bit low.
Is it a little low?
Yes.
Let's see if I can adjust it.
Your worship, I think it happens as well, just when you turn away from the computer a little bit.
Okay, I
So
will try to keep my eye on the screen. Can you hear me? Okay. So the motion then by Councillor Hamlin is that council delegate authority to the CAO to select a representative to participate on the joint physician recruitment committee in the absence of the appointed council representative. And I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Comey, thank you. And Councillor Hamlin, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This simple motion is to address a rule on this committee, which I'm sitting and representing our community. There are 5 municipalities participating, and the meetings that are held monthly will not proceed if every municipality does not have a representative at the table. So in the event that I cannot attend for some reason, the purpose of this motion is to allow our CAO to delegate to some other person the ability to attend.
Okay, thank you. I would look maybe to Clerk Amos. Sarah, in this kind of context, when it's not a town committee, how would this process work?
Certainly. If they are requesting us to appoint an alternate, I think we have the capacity to do that. It's if they're looking for another public member, then it would be a different process that we would have to consider. So
maybe a clarification, Councillor Hammond, are we looking to name somebody from within council?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that works, Sarah?
Sorry, through your worship, just for clarification, does it have to be a member of council or could it be an interim member of staff that steps in?
I don't think that it matters, but I mean, everyone on, I mean, I can check. I shouldn't say I know for sure. At this committee, everyone is either a councillor or a mayor. But I don't know, I'd have to check further. I know the motion's worded broadly enough to allow a staff person, so if an unlikely event arose, I could certainly find out.
Okay, are there any questions or comments then, council, before we call the vote? Councillor Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you. So just to clarify, Mayor Saunderson, so this would mean that it's not going to be a defined individual at this point. It'll be ad hoc as to the date, and it may be different people, different times.
Well, the reading of the motion is that it would be giving the authority to CAO Skinner to select a representative. I'll maybe defer that question in part to Councillor Hamlin. Were you looking for a consistent appointment or just leaving it in the hands of the CAO?
I know the other municipalities have selected an individual who would be the person always. This was staff suggestion that it be left general. I don't have a preference.
Any follow? I'll go to CAO Skinner and then I've got you, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Jeffrey and also to Councillor Hamlin. We did suggest that it be left with the CAO just to allow nimbleness, although I had assumed it would be a consistent individual unless that second person for some reason couldn't go. We'd extend the invitation to someone else on council. But I could see the value in something as sort of far-reaching and complicated as physician recruitment, that we had this consistency to the extent that was possible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I was going to suggest, from my point of view anyway, it would make a lot more sense to me that there would be a regular secondary appointee, so that one person is always following the minutes and the proceedings and is up to speed and can jump in at the last minute, as it were, as required. It doesn't make any sense to me anyway, for this to be an ad hoc position.
Okay, well, I guess we could do this one of two ways. You could put a motion to amend on the floor, or we could have council members who are interested apply through the CAO, and the CAO could name the first or name a person to be that main designate. And then I guess as a fallback option, then the CAO still has the ability to name another person in the event that the alternate's unavailable. Because as I understand what Councillor Hamlin is telling us, unless there's a 5 as a quorum, there has to be a representative from each municipality in order for the meeting to occur.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it seems to me that we need to build a little bit of flexibility in there. Otherwise, the committee may have a tough time getting quorum. So does that assist Councillor Doherty that we, well, maybe I should ask Councillor Hamlin since it's her motion. Would it make sense then, Councillor Hamlin, if we're looking for a permanent alternate, to have people apply to the CAO, since we're giving CAO Skinner the authority to name the alternate?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, if there's a stampede of councillors who want to be the second person, I'm sure our CAO could bring it back and we could have an election, but I think that's a satisfactory way of approaching it.
Okay, then. Does that answer your question or concerns, Councillor Doherty?
Yes, that's satisfactory.
Okay. Well, then we'll pass the motion, and if you're interested in being the alternate, please let CAO Skinner know, and if we get a flood of applications, then we'll bring it back and deal with it then. So I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So the next bylaw we have, we're back to bylaws, is item 10.1. And that is moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Comey. And this is the bylaw for the sign bylaw amendment for the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. And the bylaw, or the amendment reads, be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-82 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2012-110 to regulate or prohibit signs and other advertising devices be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. And this is to implement the change in the definition of the sign, as well as include the provision which allows staff to require the a sign to be taken down if it's deemed to be offensive and contravening, I think, the human rights legislation. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote, Council? Go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you so much to our staff for bringing forward this comprehensive amendment to change our bylaw. It's an exciting evening, I think, for our council to be enacting changes to our sign bylaw, which, as you mentioned, will allow the town in its discretion to remove signs that have messages that are deemed offensive or discriminatory as defined in the Ontario Human Rights Code or the Canadian Human Rights Act. I'm very happy to see this before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. Does this change allow the town to regulate anything on private property. I'm just bearing in mind how we got here and the issue that brought this entire thing and the requirement of these changes to our attention in the first place.
Thank you. I'll look to Executive Director Culver, I think, for that. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you, Worship. So on private property, on commercial private property, yes, it would. If it's for commercial purposes and in business intent, then yeah, it does have effect on that.
And as a follow-up, but on a residential property like a flagpole, this does not bring any material change to our bylaw.
I don't think it applies to flags, but would it apply to any sign on private property? Director Culver.
So no, it would not apply to signs that were not intended for commercial purposes.
Thank you. Just didn't want to mislead anyone with any ideas that it's doing more than it's actually doing. Thank you.
Okay. I see Councillor Hamlin has a card up, but I'll just look around the table, Councillor Hamlin, to see if anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to speak would like to speak. Seeing none, go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I did not read it the way that Director Culver is explaining it because, and I don't know what to take this question, but just to say, sign used to be defined with reference to advertising products, and now it's defined as a medium to attract attention to a specific subject matter for identification, information, or advertising purposes. So, you know, to me, it's not merely restricted to commercial properties, but I think I'll take this offline and discuss it further with Director Culver this week. Thank you.
I think we can follow that up, but we'll get the bylaw passed and get clarification. All right.
Sorry, through your worship, just so we're clear, the language is changed as per council's direction. However, the scope of the bylaw still remains the same, and the scope of the bylaw was intended to address commercial and advertising. That was explained when the report came to council in July, I believe it was. So just to make, happy to talk about it later offline.
Okay. All right, council, seeing no other cards, then I will call the vote for the bylaw. All in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you. And then item 10.2 is another bylaw, and it is moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan, and this deals with the treasurer and actor and treasurer appointments. It's be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-83, being a bylaw to appoint a treasurer for the corporation of the town of Collingwood, be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. Council, any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. And notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I actually have two, the second of which I believe to be timely and in need of, I'm going to request a waive notice on that one. So I don't know if you want me to wait with that until under other business.
No, we'll deal with it now, but why don't we start first with the notice that requires waiving?
Sure. Yep. The first notice is that council herein request a staff report regarding the establishment and terms of reference of an attainable housing task force and report back to standing committee in February of 2021. And based on our discussions at SIC, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Right.
And the second one, I had sent questions into CAO Skinner, and the CAO had responded to all of council with some of her input. And I'll read what I'm purporting first here, and then I would maybe ask that the CAO give us an update. So the motion would be that council asks the province to be more vocal and forceful in reducing travel with intention to avoid a COVID zone declaration of gray lockdown in Collingwood that would have strong and lasting negative impacts on Collingwood's businesses. And further, that the province strongly support shop local initiatives. So I guess first I would need to waive notice.
Right, so let's put we've got the motion, and I think, why don't you just speak briefly to the time sensitivity, and then we'll get the motion on the floor.
So the time sensitivity is to get to the province with respect to our druthers, and to try to advocate to get them moving on what it is we need to look after our local economies. So I believe the CAO has had conversations today that would support the intention of this motion, and maybe it might be appropriate to have the CAO do the update first. I don't know.
Well, I think I think generally on motions to waive, we get right to the point. So
Yep.
I think I'm just going to look for a seconder, Councillor Berman. And with that said, then I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. And then Councillor Jeffrey, I'll just get you to read the motion again, and we'll get a seconder, and then I'll look to the CAO.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that actually Councillor Hamlin wanted to second, so just I'll put that out there. That council asked the province to be more vocal and forceful in reducing travel with intention to avoid a COVID zone declaration of gray lockdown in Collingwood that would have strong and lasting negative impacts on Collingwood's businesses, and further, that the province strongly support shop local initiatives.
Okay, Councillor Hammond, do you want to second that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do.
Okay, and I'll look to CAO Skinner for the update, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the update I had planned to provide is it's on 3 topics that related directly to the COVID red declaration. The third one is very specifically about this travel time piece. So if it's okay, I'll provide that 3-part update.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so we are really very much in the throes of figuring out what it means to comply with the red zoning. And we've already had a couple of comments tonight, and I'm sure the public's hearing through the news and the health unit as well, what it means to be in the red zone. So, most importantly, things like organized events and social gatherings are now limited to 5 people indoors and 25 people outdoors, and there's further restrictions on restaurants and businesses, but people can still go to restaurants to some extent and can still shop in person in stores to some extent as well, which is wonderful. Should we go to the gray lockdown zone, those types of avenues would close, and we'd be left with things like curbside pickup. So it's very important that everyone acts appropriately, as the mayor was mentioning, the hand washing, the staying separate. And I think that we've had wonderful cooperation from all of our businesses in Collingwood. In fact, in our local South Georgian Bay area, on a coordinated approach to COVID. The first question I wanted to address was one that was asked just before the weekend, which was, if we do go to red, would it make sense for Collingwood to be separated from South Simcoe, either now or in the future? And I was able to email with Dr. Gardner today and to look at some of the statistics. And while I wish the answers were different, we are not that different from the other South Simcoe municipalities. And the one chart that Dr. Gardner drew my attention to, and it's on the health unit's health stats site, very accessible on their website, is the weekly COVID-19 incidence rate per 100,000 people by municipality. So Collingwood right now, as of November 29th, which is the last dates published, was at 29 people per 100,000. Otherwise, within the county, we have Barrie at 60, Bradford at 82, Clearview at 41. And I won't, it's a lot of numbers. You can look at them yourself directly. But largely, while we're a little lower than the others, we're within the pack. Council could be asking that we are separated from the rest of Simcoe, but I think our argument is limited today, is limited at best. It may get better in the future if we do a great job of controlling infection rates here. But it's not something that I would suggest council would find a lot of facility in pursuing today. The second update and question I was asked was related to restricting access to the town-run facilities. And if you'll recall, in later November, Dr. Gardner had suggested to municipalities that we proactively do this, and we did, and it was further endorsed by council. And what it said in our motion was that we not let people from the red zone into our recreational facilities, which is a little bit of a challenge for us today since Collingwood is in the red zone. The decision on the rec facilities in the short term under the delegation of authority that you've provided to the CAO, I can make that decision and have been discussing it today with staff and with the health unit to some extent, mostly with staff today, frankly. And I'm contemplating an adjustment to our instruction to staff. And what that would be is that we would allow people from orange, yellow, and green zones. We would, of course, allow Collingwood residents and property owners, encouraging those who are permanently residing in Collingwood to be the ones that come. I'm contemplating whether we should continue to allow residents from Wasaga and Clearview, being our adjacent neighbors, frequent users of our facilities, and also with very similar transmission rates to Collingwood. Current athletes from our existing local teams or leagues, so say the minor hockey players that have been here all along and are continuing to play, or at least continuing to practice in the red. And we're looking at a higher burden of proof so that it's not fully the honor system. We've always said that we retain the right to check people's documentation on their residence, but we have rarely found the need to use it to date. So that decision has not been finally made, and but I did want to tell you where my mind was today, and we'll have another opportunity next Monday to take a second look at that should there be other things that we should consider. And finally, the recommended motion that Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Hamlin have put on the table. There's a piece of context to this travel, which is that while Simcoe Muskoka is in red, Grey Bruce is in yellow, which means that they're also potentially about to open some major tourist attractions such as the ski hills. So if we're looking at how to best protect Collingwood and how to, at almost all cost, keep us from moving into a further state of lockdown, many of those things are in fact not within council's control. They're within provincial control. And Dr. Gardner has advised that individuals not travel from red or gray areas to Simcoe Muskoka. And there are a number of local businesses that have decided on their own behalf to restrict people from their own facilities. And they're doing that to keep themselves and the community safe the best that they know how. And they're open to making that decision. They're free to make that decision for their own business. So I do think that for provincial level travel, the only group that will be able to consider if it should be restricted and when to restrict it will be the province. However, we locally will be feeling the effects if transmission continues. And I did note, and I don't have a lot of information, and this is my last piece, is that the Business Improvement Association also had provided an update, brief update through Deputy Mayor Hall this morning, that they were looking at potentially some changes for the Friday night activities in the business improvement area for this coming Friday. And that's the extent of my update on COVID red zone. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sonia. That was very thorough. Deputy Mayor, do you want to add anything about the BIA at this point?
Thank you. I don't think that I'm really actually in a position, given the fact that it's a board that needs to actually meet in person, or in this case via Zoom, to discuss and then make a decision on behalf of the membership. What I may say, though, is just that after two very successful Friday evenings, and I think in large part to the efforts of the board, the membership within the downtown, but the community as a whole, we saw two very successful Friday evenings that, quite frankly, shed cheer and joy to the community in a time that is needed. But this was an event that was planned some months ago in advance of us going through the various phases to where we are today. And it would not be prudent to step back and reevaluate before we proceed any further. The reason that we're meeting tomorrow is that there was conversation over the weekend, but from a procedural standpoint, tomorrow morning was the earliest that we could to meet as a board to make any decisions moving forward.
Good, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Jeffrey, do you want to speak to the motion, and we'll open the floor?
Well, thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and I think the CAO has summarized her findings very well, and I do believe it is the province that we need to lean on to help us with this. But of most concern to me is trying to keep our local economy going, and finding the ways that they can assist us to keep things moving along and avoid that lockdown.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to council. Any comments? Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you. I appreciate CAO Skinner's support of the need for the province to weigh in on this, because I do feel that early on in this pandemic, the province was quite clear in saying that we should not be traveling at all from our home to other communities unless it was essential. And I believe that message has been lost, or it's been changed. And there are so many messages on this illness that it is very hard to keep up. So I am supporting this because I believe we need our province to clearly state what is appropriate behavior to protect our communities in this difficult time. I also wanted to ask one question of CO Skinner having to do with the incidence rate, because I heard her, and now through you, Mr. Mayor, I heard that we're not far from the pack, but in my mind, I thought the incident rate was so much higher in that strip of communities that are Barrie and south, whether, and south towards the GTA, because there's a lot of people who are working now in Barrie and traveling south, or living south and traveling north. That is a really high corridor of traffic. And to me, if their incident rate is double ours or 3 times ours, that is a significant difference. I feel that Collingwood is almost not isolated. Clearly, we're not isolated, and our count is sadly going up. But I wanted to ask CO Skinner if she in particular addressed this issue of the communities that are in the line of Barrie and south with our health person.
CO Skinner?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Hamlin. I have the benefit and privilege of meeting each week with the CAOs from Simcoe and Muskoka and Dr. Gardner and some of his senior staff. And we have discussed this specific item twice, once quite recently. And I'm not an epidemiologist, so I I can take the question back to them to more clearly explain. But I think, as I understand it, the rates are when you look at per 100,000 of population, the differences in the end, if you had a few cases and they started to transmit, could very quickly even out. So while the numbers started out being split quite away, and for some time Collingwood didn't even have enough cases to register, we're suddenly registering and moving up that scale quite quickly. So that's the best answer I can give you today, but I can attest that I will re-ask that question, and I do know that Dr. Gardner expressed to me earlier today that he felt the numbers were close enough that a split at this time would not be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to support this, but I am hesitant about unintended consequences. And so I wouldn't mind a little bit of clarification on what it is that we're actually talking about, because boy, I tell you, if I don't get to go skiing, I'm gonna be so mad. So if blue stays yellow and we are red, that means we're asking the province to say that we here in Collingwood can't go skiing?
That's a possibility, I think, but I think we're focused more on the gray areas. I'll look at Councillor Jeffrey to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. That was part of the conversation this afternoon, but I think it is avoiding the gray lockdown and again, following the protocols. And I believe that the resorts have a very clear protocol for an outside activity. So you may not be able to go do the things indoors, but they have everything in place, from my understanding, for the chairlifts and actually participating in the skiing part. So I think our focus right now is on our businesses, our local economy, and trying to try to distance ourselves from those approaching the gray lockdown numbers.
Any follow-up, Councillor McLeod?
Yeah, I remain a little confused about what it is that we're asking for. So we're asking the province to be more clear about requesting people in the gray zones to not come here or anywhere, to not leave the gray zone. And I'm assuming that means that the people in red zones would be asked to not go to yellow zones and so on and so on. Or is that what we're thinking? Is it just strictly regarding the gray people?
Councillor Jeffrey?
My focus at this point was the gray lockdown areas, and really reinforcing the messaging to people who own 2 properties to pick one and stay there. You can pick us if you own property here, but you need to quarantine when you get here and stay here, but don't be running back and forth.
Thank you. That's the thought that I was looking for. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. This may have been answered by Councillor Jeffrey, but I am just looking for some further clarification, piggybacking up on Councillor McLeod's question. I think that our community overall has done a good job in terms of adhering to what the province and what the health district has asked of us. But I also can see signs of fatigue within the community, and that there are cases that are occurring. And unfortunately, one of the things that I have found, and this is a personal comment, a little bit frustrating, and it has led to assumptions, and that is that in the reporting, and I would never ask for personal data in terms of names, addresses, that type of thing, but there's been a lot of area for speculation as to where maybe the vaccine, or sorry, not the vaccine, but the virus originated from. So when we're talking about those who are maybe visiting our community, whether that be for a day as they're passing through to go to the Beaver Valley Ski Club that was open this past weekend, or for our neighbors to the east where Horseshoe and Mount St. Louis Moonstone were open. I also think that we need to take a hard look at our own community and people within our community. All you have to do is look at Facebook to see those who are skiing out west, who are visiting island resorts, who are in the south of the border. Now, I acknowledge these are not day trips, but they too, are going to and from. Then they are going through services that are being provided through Mississauga, through the regional airport, or the GTTA there. And I just think it's, if we're going to send a message or a request to the province, it needs to be a two-way message that, or a two-pronged message that says, look, we need some help in clarifying and asking people to stay in place. But at the same time, that also applies to our community when people are looking to go elsewhere during this pandemic. I don't know if there's a question there.
Well, I think it was a good statement anyway. Any other questions or comments, council? I will be supporting this motion. We had a similar motion during the first wave, and our messaging was very much what the deputy mayor has referred to. We are asking our residents and our seasonal residents to be in Collingwood if that's where you're going to be, and to not leave Collingwood. And similarly, from people outside of the Collingwood region, not to come to Collingwood at this time. It's not the time to be traveling for day trips. And in the second wave, the province has implemented regional rankings based on the modeling, and which has made the pressures to travel, I think, and the disparities more notable. So now that we know who's gray and who's red, there is the desire to come to the areas that are not as high in the transmission rates, but also the risk of spreading infection. So we are seeing that the second wave is very insidious. And getting into our population, we've seen our numbers jump, and we know our hospital is treating a number in ICU and on ventilators, and they've activated the alternate care facility. So we are under stress, and I think that we need to do everything we can to protect the health of our residents, but also our local businesses. So I think that this is a prudent request. I think it's one that we need to do. It's one that we didn't come to easily, but I think circumstances require it. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting it. And I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried. Oh, opposed? Duly noted. Okay, that brings us to the county report, and I am advised by the deputy mayor that he'll be bringing a year-end report to the next meeting. Which brings us into item 13, council business, old or deferred business. Council, is there any old or deferred business you'd like to bring forward tonight? Seeing none, any other business? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just wanted to bring attention to the Federal Climate Plan of 2020 and FCM's notes within it that would be important for the town of Collingwood. And so there's three major proposals for community-rooted green recovery, and the announcement of the Federal Climate Plan number one is efficient public transit. So there's a clear commitment to a permanent transit fund and new funding to adopt zero-emission transit vehicles faster, plus committing to a national active transportation strategy to strengthen local efforts to support cycling, walking, and other green alternatives to cars. And number two is the direct investment into local green innovation, and especially noting the new investments to help retrofit community buildings on top of the progress that we're already driving together through FCM's Green Municipal Fund. And thirdly is the support for local climate resilience and welcoming the Fed's commitment to work with municipalities to develop a first ever national adaptation strategy. And we need urgent funding to keep people safe, and welcome new support for natural infrastructure solutions. And the comment I'd like the best from FCM that today is moving from aspiration to action, and that's where municipalities excel. And I think that ours will be no different. So just wanted to report on that.
For that. Councillor Hamlin, did you have your hand up? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In October, we had a young couple address us on behalf of Enswell Beer, which is hoping to be a craft brewery operating in Collingwood. And they approached the town again last Friday. Really, they have a site now in mind and are hoping for some help getting the appropriate zoning in place. Our problem is our zoning bylaw is so sadly out of date, it requires a zoning amendment to add a craft brewery to it in order for them to go ahead. So I have a question this evening for Director Farr as to what assistance we can give this young entrepreneurial couple in terms of making sure their application moves ahead as quickly as possible so they don't lose their opportunity on the property they found. Thank you.
Director Farr.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hamlin. There does seem to be some broad support for this couple's entrepreneurial efforts, and as council is well aware, the town's well known for its entrepreneurial spirit. So it's apparent to me that they're sort of riding that wave of good feelings around that support. So you're right that we did just receive an inquiry on a new location that this couple was proposing on Friday. And as we've indicated back in October, and you know, as I indicated to them over the weekend, or at least on Friday, we want to be as helpful as we can. Depending upon the complexity of it, like it appears that there's that this could be a straightforward application. It does require a little bit of work, but if that's the case, it's certainly something that we would move through the process in a speedy fashion. That is that we have a lot of applications going on. A lot of them are quite complex. But where there's a simple application or it's more straightforward, we are able to move through the system more quickly. So assuming we get the required kind of paperwork and they're able to shape things up and form it up, then we'd certainly be wanting to work with them. And I think I indicated them in my email to them on Friday that we were planning to get back to them this week and try to provide them with some information, which we're hopeful will be helpful to them over the holidays, so that if they choose to move forward, we'll be able to do that in a kind of like an efficient fashion.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
No, thank you.
All right, seeing no other business, then we will move on to item 14, and that's the motion to proceed in camera. And it is moved by Councillor Madigan and seconded by Councillor Berman. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to 1, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land for town or local board purposes, A, B, and C. 2, the security of the property of the town or local board, item C. And 3, the receiving of device that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And that's item C. And the items for discussion are A, sale of land, Beach Street Lane, B, potential land donation, and C, review and update of social housing interests. Go ahead, Clerk Almus.
My apologies, through your worship. I just to be clear, we should have just said housing interests versus social housing. And to be more specific, I can confirm it's 250 Erie Street, 167 3rd Street, and the Johnson Street apartments.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Council, any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? That is approved unanimously. Thank you. Before we go on camera, we'll take a 10-minute break. So we'll meet back at 18 minutes after 6. And for the press gallery, that's not anticipated that we will have a rise and report today. So if you're dismissed if you like. And otherwise, you can wait until we come back. And so with that, council, I will adjourn us or to go in camera, and we'll meet back here at 6:18. Thanks.
All right, Stephanie, if you just give us a cue and we're good to go.
Okay, you should be good to go.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. So I'll look for a motion to rise from in camera. So it's right that be it resolved that council rise from in camera at 7:38 p.m. I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Doherty and Councillor Berman. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. There is no report today. And we will then look for the confirmatory bylaw. And it is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-84 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held December 14, 2020 be enacted and passed this 14th day of December 2020. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And we'll be looking for a motion to adjourn at 7:39 p.m. Jeff, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. It was a busy council and we got about 2 inches of snow. So that's all good news. Good night, everyone.